Hi there, Let's Talk Sports fans. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of our Fantasy Football University, our second episode of four. And this is the show where it's to help you navigate the somewhat difficult waters of fantasy football at times. And we've got an all-star cast, so um, no fantasy football show would be complete on this network without Ryan Larison from Fantasy Football for the People. Thanks for joining me, Ryan.
Absolutely, Dan. I can't wait to get your guys' take on some of the questions that Dan has and try and help everybody out in winning their fantasy football leagues.
Yep. So, someone was being on this network a couple of times now. Kevin Hickey, of course, of Giants and Colts Wire. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, anytime. Thanks for having me.
And I've been looking forward to it. And Scott making his second appearance in the university, schooling you on what you should and shouldn't be doing. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you're having a good day, Scott.
Having a great day, and it's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to this. So, ready to get started.
Thanks for that, guys. So, a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank one of our sponsors, UK American Sports Store, who has kindly donated a cap to your NFL team of choice. And all what you need to do to that is share the episode from YouTube, and you'll be entered into draw at the end of the 4 episodes. So we thank them for that. And we also thank one of our sponsors, DraftKits.co, who has offered 10% off to anyone that uses the LTS code, which I will put at the bottom of the strange episode. There's someone that reached out to us as we get into fantasy season, so we always thank anyone that partners up with us. So yeah, thanks for getting involved with this event. So I guess we get started. And before we get to the first question, Tanner from Sports Buffoon says, "What's up, guys?" And Gary, another voice on this network, says, "Howdy, boys." So we thank all of you for your support.
Yep.
So
I knew they were going to be coming
I
on here to
wanted
watch.
to open up with a question, what not just for fantasy fans, but people what's running leagues around the world, is what is the best size in your experience for someone to have a league? Is it like 10, 12? So I thought I'd get your opinions on anyone that's running a league to help them make it as easy as possible. Speaking from someone that's a commissioner of a few leagues, it is challenging at best, and I'm sure Ryan has a lot of experience in that, given he's got about 733 leagues at this point. So, if we start off with you, Ryan.
The format that I've liked the most in terms of league size, I usually like to do 12 team, 10 team. I feel like the waiver wire is pretty, it's not thin enough to where it makes it super challenging for people to actually, you have to go out there and take some shots on some guys that are going to have some big weeks, but if you make the wrong call, you're really hurting. But 12 team league, I feel like, is the perfect size for it. The waiver wire is just has enough players to where if you need a replacement, they're there, but they're not plentiful. You're not getting guys like, I've played in a couple 10 team leagues last year where I was picking up like Ramondre Stevenson and dropping him and feeling comfortable about it. You would never do that in a 12 team league unless there was an injury that happened and stuff like that. So 12 is good. 14 to 16, that's where you get, that's a big boys league. You really gotta, you've got to know the fourth wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars and potentially pick him up. So it's that those leagues are definitely, I would suggest those for more seasoned players, but 12 I think is the perfect format. It just offers enough challenge for everybody to be able to navigate the wire, and then I've seen with bigger leagues, you see a lot more people drop out once their team kind of starts to go on the slide a little bit. So I like that format much better.
Thanks for that, Ryan. And before I hand over to Kevin, I just realised I forgot to shout out your page, of course, Fantasy Football for the people. So anyone what's in the look for fantasy advice, Ryan doesn't just write articles or have polls. He offers a unique service where you can DM him for advice with drafts or lineups, and that's going to be changing this year with Paul and Gary in our community. Baby on the way to just growing blue. So, yeah, you may well regret that, Ryan, but I encourage everyone to check out what Ryan's doing over on his own page, and of course his very talented articles over at Rotoballer. So, yeah, I know he'd appreciate a follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's okay that I've just took on even more work at Rotoballer this past week, taking on a couple teams to manage throughout the entirety of the preseason and the regular season too. So when you get your updates from them, those will most likely come from me as well. So it's okay. You guys can still message me. I'm still going to be able to answer your questions and stuff like that, and I'll get to them as quick as possible when I get the chance.
So there you have it. Someone on the rise. So what better than to buy stock now? So please check out his page. So Kevin, do you have a preference on the size of a fantasy league?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Ryan there. I think 12 is kind of the perfect balance of challenge, while also having, not having to do a deep dive into, who the fourth string wide receiver is and who the rookies on the practice squad are. So, it also depends, I think, just how your league is set up. I mean, if you have a 12-team league, but only 7 or 8 teams are really competitive or really paying attention, then, it's going to make everything a lot difficult. So I think when it comes to the size, I think a minimum is 10. I think if you can get 10 teams, that's like Ryan said, it kind of, the rosters are a little stronger. The waiver wire is a little more robust, but at least at that point, you can start to separate the good players from the bad players. But as long as you have a strong number of like active players, guys that are looking at the waiver wire, guys that are, active in trade talks, as long as you have a good core of that, then it's going to be a good league. So, but I agree. I haven't really done a whole lot of 14 team. I don't think I've ever done a 16 team league. But yeah, I'd say 12 is probably 12 is probably the sweet spot.
What about you, Scott? Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. 10's too small. It also depends on the experience level of the people that you have in your league. If they're just starting out or in their first or second year, then maybe you do a 10 team the first year or two, and then you expand it to 12. And PPR is the way to go, I think, because standard is a totally different animal in terms of drafting. PPR, at least you have a chance to get some guys off the waiver wire that'll help you. Standard, there's usually no running backs there. So 10 team PPR, if the experience level is rookie or first or second year, if it's larger than that, at 12 team PPR is usually the norm in fantasy. So
we've got a live comment what piggybacks a little bit on this. Gary asks, how many PPR leagues are too many, and do you guys mostly play best ball, one and done, play fewer leagues, and do you need to set your lineups? If we start with you, Ryan.
I think right now I'm in like 35 different best ball leagues, so that would probably be the majority of leagues that I play in. And yeah, it does make it easier because you don't have to set your lineups. Most of those are PPR. My preferred format is half because I feel like it adds just a little bit enough of a challenge to where, yes, Keenan Allen is going to be a higher drafted pick in a full PPR, but when he's half PPR, do you take him over certain guys that are going around him just because he gets a little bit of a boost due to how many receptions that he's getting? In terms of how many leagues or too many leagues, it really depends on what time you got to manage them. Like I spend way too much time on managing the ones that I'm in that are redraft or dynasty leagues, but I like to advise people, like, if you got like 2 to 3 redrafts, you do a lot of best ball because you like to do the drafting aspect. And if you add a dynasty or two in there, I don't think you're going to hurt yourself too much in terms of time constraint, because dynasty leagues, yes, you have to, manage it, make sure you're setting your lineups properly, but that's really it. The waiver wire in dynasty leagues is so thin. You're very rarely picking anybody up off of waivers. And when you want to go pick somebody up, there's going to be 6 other guys in your league that want to do the same exact thing, because it's rare that someone on the waivers is, garnering any sort of attention during the regular season. So I suggest those, because you get to manage those all year long, and that'll give you something to do in the downtime. And then during the regular season, you just got to set a lineup, and that's it, and manage it and watch scores and stuff like that. So, manage what you think you can. You're going to have to sink a good probably half hour to an hour every single week into your league when you're not watching the game. So go off of that kind of baseline, if you will.
Yeah,
Do you agree with that, Scott, or is there anything else you want to add?
How much time do you have on Wednesdays do you waivers? That's the whole thing. I mean, last year I was in, I think, over 20 best balls, and I was in 60 leagues, set in waiver wire terms, including my high stakes. So I needed a good 3 or 4 hours to do waivers that week, each week, just to get through it. So it depends on your Wednesday, because that's usually when waivers run, Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday, preferably Wednesday. So I would say no more than it depends, 20 leagues, maybe 25 leagues. That'll give you a good 2-hour waiver wire period for your whole entire thing. So that's what I would go with.
Any other tips, Kevin?
Yeah, I just, for me, it comes down to, I think I was in last year, like 8 redraft teams, then I had 2 dynasty leagues. So it got to the point where if you find it exhausting or frustrating that you have to go to the waiver wire, you're like, oh man, I got another league to look at. At that point, you probably need to cut it down. Because it is, like these guys have said, it's very time consuming. Just knowing what players are available, how the different scoring formats work with your team, what you need, what other teams need. So, every number is probably different for a lot of people. I wound up having to cut one of my leagues this year. And it sucks because you don't want to do that. You want to, especially now, draft season, everybody's getting hyped for draft season. It's the best time of the year. Everybody's optimistic. But when you get to a point where it's not fun to look at the waiver wire, that's when you need to start cutting leagues down.
I would agree with that. So our next question is, so everybody loves a sleeper receiver to add to your team during the draft. So I thought this would be a good topic to get and ask your opinion who people should be looking at as their sleeper receivers. If we start with you, Ryan.
I'll hammer someone that I've been hammering on previous shows, but just to kind of get the input of you guys as well. I've been grabbing Alec Pierce, wide receiver for the Colts, with my second to last pick in pretty much every single draft that I've been in, unless somebody has, read my work and then they snag him in like the 10th round and then message me just to spite me, which has happened a little too often, unfortunately. I love the fact that Matt Ryan is there now in Indianapolis. I think that the passing offense is just going to work more efficiently, if that's a good way to put it. I think Carson Wentz did fine last year in terms of statistical output. Michael Pittman was a fine fantasy asset, but behind him there was just a hodgepodge of receivers that they were trying to work into the passing game, and it just didn't work out. Alec Pierce is what is the type of receiver that they needed last year. And now they've got the one quarterback in the NFL that likes to hyper target his number 2 wide receiver in the red zone more than probably any quarterback in the league right now. So I think the pairing with Matt Ryan is perfect. He has the perfect skill set to be able to succeed in Indianapolis. And then on top of that, he's got like that dominator factor to him when you watch some of his college tape. It's not the most productive in terms of stats, but he scored 8 touchdowns in his final season there, 52 receptions. That's a high touchdown to reception total. So I just like the pairing there. You're spending such a late round pick on him that you don't really have to worry about if he hits or not. You can just drop him, after the first couple of weeks if you don't like it. But the way that I put it is from 20, this is the favorite stat that I have from 2016 to 2020 for Matt Ryan. He threw 26 total touchdowns to his number one wide receiver. His number two wide receiver at the time had 37. He just likes to hyper target his number two wide receiver in the end zone, and that plays to Alec Pierce's strengths. So I think that right there is going to, lead to some fantasy production. And he's one of the rookie wide receivers that just doesn't really get talked about in this rookie class, which makes sense. But I like being able to take the value on him and, snag him in almost any league that I have and see if he can work out within the first 2 weeks.
Scott, do you have anyone you're keeping your eye on, or what you think people should be?
So I'll give you two. Kadarius Toney with the Giants is my first one, and you can get him in the double-digit rounds. And if you remember last year what he did against Dallas, 10 catches, 180 yards, and I believe it was 2 touchdowns. It could have been 1, but I know it was definitely 1. And then the next game against the Giants, he basically was the guy that Daniel Jones went to that whole first drive, and then he got hurt. So to me, that spells that, Golladay is there. He's struggling right now in Giants camp. Sterling Shepard is just an afterthought, basically. So I would go with Kadarius Toney because if he stays healthy, he's going to hit big for you as a wide receiver 4 or 5 if you draft him that way. And my second guy is Isaiah Mckenzie as a deep sleeper. He's running with the ones right now. He's only got Jamison Crowder in front of him. Jamison Crowder is a good receiver, not a great receiver. Isaiah Mckenzie against the Patriots last year was uncoverable. 10 catches, 120-something yards, and a touchdown. So if Isaiah Mckenzie vaults into that number 3 role and that starting slot position, he could pan out really nicely for you because remember, Josh Allen peppered Cole Beasley with targets in a lot of games. So those 2 guys right there, and I'm going to piggyback off Ryan, Alec Pierce. He's only got Paris Campbell in his way, and Paris Campbell's not the picture of health. So if Campbell gets hurt for whatever reason, there's no T.Y. Hilton there. Pierce could hit for you big, and he's a late round draft pick. So those guys right there, if you can hit big on those guys, those could be league winners for you. So those guys for me.
Yep, love that. From what I hear, Mckenzie's having a monster camp, and in regard to a Tony suggestion, we've got someone that might have some insight. Next up in Kevin.
Yeah, I love all those 3 picks, especially my guy Alec Pierce. I was pounding the table for the Colts to draft him. He's having a really good camp, going up against Stephon Gilmore too, so that's going to help him develop along the way. But I've been coming around a lot on Christian Kirk. I mean, I know he's dealing with the ankle injury right now, but they paid him an insane amount of money. The Jaguars did in free agency, and while they did overpay for him, he's going to step right into that role as the number 1 wide receiver. I think he can push for a 21% target share, 22% target share in that offense. Trevor Lawrence was not good by any means last year, but I'm willing to give him a pass for the Urban Meyer situation and just the way the whole offense was preparing week to week and the whole way they were game planning or lack of game planning. But I just think with Christian Kirk's skill set, he's a guy that's going to play the Z receiver spot. He's going to be kind of like a vertical slot. He's got good speed. He's turning into a pretty good route runner. So I think as long as he stays healthy, I think the target share is going to be there for him. They paid him a lot of money. They invested in him. So, you have that going for him. And I just think there's going to be so much opportunity in this Jaguars offense for him to take a large target share. And that's the kind of stuff you look for. I think he's going in the 8th, 9th round in 12-team drafts. So, I think just the opportunity, the talent, the investment that the Jaguars made, he's a pretty big sleeper for me right now.
Yeah, and Dan, I'll piggyback off that real quick. I've got some hate because of my rankings. I got him right at wide receiver 25. He's like right at that wide receiver 2 line, and that's just after projections, like you said.
I got him at 28. So
yeah, and people are like, "Oh my God, he's never going to get there." I don't understand why you have him ranked so high. I think you're 100% right. There's no reason why he can't. If he ends the season inside the top 24, I'm not going to be shocked. But I feel like the
Not at all.
fantasy community is, and I don't really understand why when he's paired with Trevor Lawrence, got paid to be the number one, and they've got a head coach there that actually knows how to run an offense other than Urban Meyer.
I agree. I mean, I can't speak about from a fantasy point of view, but I think everyone looks at what the Jaguars were last year and forget what a season Christian Kirk had and look at that overpay, and we all agree it was an overpay, but that's more reason why they'll use him. They've got to use him if you look at their offense. And then you look at the talent of Trevor Lawrence, because you mentioned the talent of Christian Kirk. It also comes into if Trevor Lawrence reaches anything close to the potential second season he can have, then you've got a bit of a sleeper there in him. So I think maybe people are sleeping on him, looking at the situation. So there's a sort of boom and bust potential there, and I think it's mostly going to be bust from my point of view.
Yeah, no, that's understandable.
The next question I wanted to ask you is, it's always hard to know where to get your information from a fantasy point of view. So I was going to get each of you to shout out someone you depend on for information. And Ryan, I know for a lot of the community that will be you. But is there someone you depend on for your information? Of course, absent of your number one content creator, that being yourself.
I mean, I don't want to make it sound like a shameless plug, but I used Rotoballer for so much before I even started working there. I mean, I work for him. Maybe I'll get some sort of raise or something, a little extra in my check. I love using Rotoballer. I mean, there's other sites out there that give me like the player news and stuff like that. Sleeper app does that, but they also use Rotoballer, so it kind of goes hand in hand. NBC Sports Edge has used stuff before where I've gone and looked at their player news and stuff like that. My big thing is trying to, because I can get all the stats and numbers that I want from tons of different places on the internet, and I do a lot of them on my own as well during the season to create my own spreadsheets and stuff like that. But I need to know about player news. I need to know when a guy goes down and gets hurt during the season. I need to know, who's getting cut in the offseason, who's getting signed, so I can make my moves in all my leagues, especially dynasty formats and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a cop-out, but I use Rotoballer for pretty much all of that stuff. I did before I started working for him, so that would have been my answer then, and it's going to be my answer now. So hopefully you guys have something different.
There's nothing wrong with that, particularly if they're paying your paycheck. So, Scott, is it the same? And also, do you have an interview lined up with Rotoballer so you can get paid by them?
I don't know. Maybe Ryan can get me in somehow, but there's two gentlemen that I go to. I'm signed up to a few sites. I'm signed up to Fantasy Points. I'm signed up to Rollerballer. I'm signed up to RotoWire. I'm signed up to a couple other sites too. But there's two gentlemen that I go to a lot, and it's Jim Coventry and Bob Harris with a lot of my questions, a lot of my, what they think. I just in the last year or two, it's picked up to where I've been able to go to Bob Harris with any questions I had. Jim Coventry I've known for 4 or 5 years, and they both do great jobs. I mean, with the content they provide, they're on Sirius Radio. So that's where I go to a lot of the time. I have some other people I go to, but for the most part, it's those two and any site that I sign. I'm signed up to 5 different sites. So I'm there's not a lot of differentiation in the information, but there is some in terms of one site will have a jump on a quicker. They're going to sign this guy, a wide receiver, and you pick him up and you see how he does because he could be starting that week. But that's where I go. Those are the people I mainly go to. So,
is there anyone you depend on for your information, Kevin?
Yeah, I depend on a lot of people. I think they're, like the guys said, there are a lot of sites now where you can find the deep dive articles on statistics. Like I'm a big RotoViz fan. I think they do a lot of good stuff. I think they have a lot of good information just in terms of statistics and really finding deeper plays and stuff like that. You got the big guys like the fantasy footballers, JJ Zachariason. I listen to them a lot. And then, I follow this one account on Twitter. I don't know the handle. I think it's like at 32 beat writers or something like that. It's the NFL beat writer. So basically he just retweets a bunch of news and notes from training camp and from a bunch of the beat writers around the league. And then I gotta plug my wire sites. The NFL Wire, just part of USA Today, we have a site for every team. And our big thing is putting out content, right? Like we want to put out as much content as we can, as much information. And even though it may not be a total focus on fantasy football, you're going to be able to find a lot of information, a lot of tidbits with those sites. So, I got to shout out my network there. So, but yeah, you can just do a quick Twitter search and you'll find a lot of information, a lot of statistics. It's really blowing up on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter's a really good resource, especially like you said, Kevin, for the beat reporters and stuff like that. That's where you get a lot of information that doesn't even get reported on sites that we work for, even unless it's team specific and it's a real deep dive. But there's stuff on there that you can find out about, especially right now, about some depth pieces that could impact starters come week one, and maybe you can get a leg up on knowing who that like random breakout is when you didn't expect them to come out.
Yeah, make no mistake, a lot of what we talked about, they're national guys. If you go to the beat writers who cover the team day in and day out, you can glean a lot of information from what they're writing and what they're saying. So if you get a chance to go to specifically to the team's newspaper, to the city's newspaper, and the beat writers are there, read that article really carefully, and you can get some information out that might help you in a pickup or your team. So
I agree with that, and I'll shout out mine, of course, Ryan Larson from Fantasy Football for the People. Look, from someone what up to a year ago hadn't played fantasy football, and when I approached Ryan, he had time to teach me, and we formed a working relationship and a friendship. So anyone that wants fantasy football explained, not just with statistics, but in easy to follow, then check out his content, and I do thank him for school with me.
Hey, you've been one of my best students, Dan. I mean, in 1 year, you've got teams that I'm pretty jealous of that I didn't get the chance to draft myself, and you stole all my guys in our co-host league, so you got a great team.
It just proves I read your articles. So the other question I did want to ask all of you is, moving to tight ends, is there any sleeper tight ends what people are keeping their eye on? For me, it's Tyler Conklin. For one, it's Rangy, one of the few Jets players I can draft and justify not being a homer pick as my tight end too. So shout out to Paul for also having that tactic. Brian, is there anyone you've got your eye on? And I think I might know the answer to this.
Yeah, I'll shamelessly plug again so I don't have to go into crazy amounts of detail. I just wrote about this player on Rotoballer, got posted this morning. Gerald Everett goes in the 14th round of most of the drafts that I've done, and I'm usually picking him in the 13th just so I make sure I have the chance to have him. If I swing and miss on tight end, especially, I like to try and target the Dalton Schultzes and the Cole Kmets because that's around that six round range for Schultz, and then the 9-10 turn for Kmet. If I can't get one of those guys, I'm auto picking Gerald Everett in like the 12th, 13th, or 14th round. We've hyped him up as a sleeper for fantasy in the past, but the problem is he's never been in the correct offense. Last year, we thought he had a chance. Russell Wilson gets hurt for the first time in his career. He has to deal with Geno Smith and then the ghost of Russell Wilson and his passing ability after he came back, and it just didn't work out. And he put up some decent numbers at times. So now he gets to go into L.A. For the Chargers. He gets to take over the Jared Cook role, where Jared Cook got 83 targets last year and only managed to catch 48 of them. That was, I think, the 44th lowest catch percentage of all tight ends that scored inside the top 45 for fantasy purposes. That's not going to happen with Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett is a better player than the shell of what Jared Cook has once been. So the target share is going to be there. It's going to be the highest target share that he's seen in his entire career. He's never surpassed 63 targets in an entire season. He's got no real competition. Donald Parham is a good player. He's not a starting tight end in the NFL, and he's definitely not a better player than Gerald Everett is. So all the reports coming out that he might take some of that starting role, I think are, complete bull. And he's paired with the perfect quarterback. Even as the fourth target, in the red zone for the Chargers last season, Cook scored 4 times on only like 11 targets, which is an insanely high number of touchdowns for someone who only had 11 targets at a tight end position as a 4th target for his own team. So I'm very high on him. I think he's got a high touchdown ceiling. I think he's got the chance to break inside that top 12 this year, and you're getting him at like tight end 16 or 17 price with one of your last few picks in a draft. So I really like his upside, and if I can't get on one of those two guys, like I mentioned previously, he's an auto pick for me.
And it was who I thought it was. Scott, is there anyone you've got your eye on?
Yeah, I mean, if I don't get a Zach Ertz type in a draft, which I love him this year, based on the first 6 games, David Njoku was my guy, and you can get him late in drafts as well. He's going to be option number 2 in the passing game, especially with Jacoby Brissett starting. Jacoby Brissett's not throwing the ball deep. Amari Cooper may have trouble getting catches in games or getting targets. Njoku's a guy that'll run over the middle, freak of nature athlete, is bigger than cornerbacks, is faster than linebackers, and he just got paid. He's making $14 million this year. So they're going to use him. They're going to use him a lot. I think with Brissett starting, I think the game plan is just going to be simply run the ball and either dump it down or get it to the tight end in the middle of the field. Brissett will rely on Njoku a lot. Last year he had 53 targets, 36 catches. I think he can outdo that easily. I think he's looking at 100 targets this year, pretty close. I think he's looking at 50 to 60 catches. And he's probably going to be the preferred red zone target in the passing game. So I like him this year a lot. You're getting him late in drafts, 14th, 15th round. I've been getting him a lot. I've been taking him. I'm totally happy with him. If I don't get Ertz, I'm waiting for the Komet types, the Njoku types, the Gerald Everett types. I'm waiting for those types of guys because, a lot of guys are taking the Kelseys and the top tight ends. I'm perfectly happy waiting for Komet and Njoku. So Njoku is my guy for sure. I think he's going to have a huge season this year for Cleveland.
Kevin, is there any tight end you love as sleeper picks?
Yeah, I was gonna say Njoku. I think that's a great selection. I think it might have been Rich Rebar who said it recently. It was like Jacoby Brissett has like the 3rd most tight end targets of his career over the last like 5 years or something like that. So I love the Njoku pick, and the guy that I haven't been in on a whole lot this offseason, but I'm starting to come around, is Albert Guebanam for the Broncos. It's a riskier pick just because he hasn't really done anything in the NFL, but he's a freak athlete. That's what we want in tight ends. Whenever you want to break out tight end or a sleeper tight end, they have to be a good athlete. I mean, it's kind of just a baseline for them to kind of creep up into that top 8, top 5 range. He got a new quarterback, Russell Wilson. We know how great he's been. He hasn't targeted the tight end position a whole lot throughout his career, but when you have a guy like a Guebanam who has that kind of athleticism, there's always potential there. And unfortunately, the injury to Tim Patrick, who tore his ACL, he's out for the season. That's going to open up a lot more targets over the middle for him. So it's a bit of a riskier pick. And like I said, I'm not 100% sold on him, but I definitely think the opportunity could be there. And then couple that with his athleticism, he's going to get a lot of one-on-one looks over the middle. So I wouldn't be surprised if he starts to creep into that top 10, top 8 range, and you can get him cheap. You can get him real cheap.
I think he's got kind of like that Hunter Henry type of play to him for New England, where it's not going to be consistent, but without Tim Patrick there, Hamler's not the same wide receiver that Patrick is. He likes to stretch the field and be a big play guy. So I think they're going to have to use a Guebanam, because I'm like you. I was not I've not been in on him. And then once
Yeah.
Patrick went down, it's like, ugh, now I have to be
You
in.
kind of have to be. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Russ didn't go there to hand the ball off 30 times to
No.
Javante and Melvin. So
Right.
he's going to get targets for sure.
Yeah.
So
love that. And before we wrap things up, there's just a quick fire question. Tanner from Sports Buffoon says, who's the guy each of you watch for this week, the first week of the preseason games? Ryan, if we start with you, and is it AJ Brown?
No, because we know how good AJ Brown is. I don't need to see him play in the preseason. I actually am going to go to a rival team, and I think he's playing. I got to relook at reports, but Wandel Robinson of the New York Giants. He's become one of the players that I'm drafting pretty much in every draft towards the end. If I can't get Alec Pierce, Wandel Robinson is the guy that I'm going to grab, because there's been reports that are coming out of Giants camp where he's basically solidified himself as the starting slot receiver. If I'm correct, Sterling Shepard is hurt. Is that right, Kevin? He hasn't even participated yet, has he?
Yeah. He's still coming back from the Achilles.
Yeah, so
which is devastating enough, and he's 30 years old. So
and I've always been a big supporter of Sterling Shepard because I think he's a great player, just with a bad injury history. And they like to throw the slot in New York. No matter who's been the coordinator there, they always seem to have the slot receiver pretty hyper targeted. So I think if he's going to be the starting slot receiver for the Giants, he's already got tons of rave reviews out of camp. This is a brand new offense with Daboll at head coach. I think he's got the potential to really break out and be one of the better fantasy rookie wide receivers that scores tons of points this year. There's a lot of guys that didn't get drafted in that first round that people are talking about for fantasy that aren't getting talked about that I think could easily outproduce them because of the offense that they're in. I think Wandale is one of those guys. So I'm definitely looking for him this weekend to see if he can, put up some good numbers against number 2 and number 3 defenses.
Scott, is there anyone you'll be watching this week?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of buzz about this situation. It's the Chiefs' backfield. Is Ronald Jones as bad as the reports are coming out? And is Isaiah Pacheco as good as everybody's saying he is? If Pacheco is as good as everybody's saying he is, then the Ronald Jones shares that everybody was drafting, he may be cut. They're talking about even cutting him from the team this year. It's not a huge financial blow to them, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been underwhelming the first 2 years. So this struggle in that backfield may work out to his benefit. And I think Isaiah Pacheco, if he's as good as the Chiefs are letting out, he could be somebody you're looking at as a really big time sleeper late in draft. So I'm looking at the Chiefs backfield situation, what Andy Reid's going to do in terms of that. I don't think CEH is going to play. I think he's going to look at Pacheco, McKinnon, and Ronald Jones and figure out who is number 2 and who is number 3. So that's what I'm watching.
Love that pick. Kevin, is there anyone you're watching?
Yeah. I mean, first week of the preseason, I mean, it's big. I'd say about 5 months ago, I was begging for the preseason. We're going to get into the first quarter tonight, and we're going to be begging to turn it off. But
You're not
no, I'm going to stick with the Chiefs too. I really want to see how Sky Moore, rookie second round pick, how he kind of fits into the offense. He's been kind of on and off with injuries here and there, but they've been moving him around the formation. They've been trying to get him targets, get him touches. And I was a big Sky Moore fan coming out of college. So I'm really excited to see how he does. And then another rookie who I kind of want to keep my eye on is Treylon Burks, just because it's been so up and down with him between the asthma stuff, between the conditioning. And, then you see some clips. He's looking pretty good against, Roger McCreary, the other rookie that they drafted, the cornerback. So it's kind of going to be interesting to see how he, is he running with the 2s, with the 3s? Because he's a big guy, he's a big playmaker, but it might take a while for him to get assimilated into the offense. So those are 2 guys that I'll be keeping my eye out on this weekend.
I will say, if Treylon Burks does not hit this year, that Tennessee offense is going to be
brutal.
I think it's going to be really bad, really, really bad. So they need him in a big time way to hit this year.
Absolutely.
I agree. And that's the danger of the move, what they make, because there's a pressure on any rookie. But They don't just need him to do well. They essentially need him to beat AJ Brown, and that's a lot of pressure given his production. So we'll see. I just want to say a couple of things. I want to thank all of you for coming on today. Me and Ryan's been looking forward to this for a while, and it's a little bit something a bit different, a virtual event like this. So I'm sure Ryan would agree with me that we just want to thank Kevin and Scott for helping out.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you. Just to get any more voices on here that have a good, fantasy background, to get, just differing opinions, different players that they like and stuff like that. It's better than hearing me drone on for an hour about the guys that I love every single week, and I pick the same guys out because I'm never going to change them. So I appreciate you guys coming on. I know Dan does as well, and hopefully we'll be able to get you guys on again in the future and talk some more fantasy football.
Absolutely. Appreciate the offer. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime you need me back, you just ask.
No problem at all. Me and Scott already talking about other areas, and he's making a couple more visits, and Kevin's going to be helping me with some of had division round tables, talking Colts for us. So looking forward to that. So there'll be a little bit of a break from the university in the next one's in 10 days' time. Looking forward to that. A few new voices coming on, so everyone keep your eye out for that. And Kevin or Scott, is there anything either of you want to promote before we wrap things up?
No, just enjoy draft season. It's here and it's hot and heavy, so enjoy it. Draft well. Get any resource you can. Look at it. If you like a resource, then invest in that fully. So
there it is. That's the perfect way to say it.
Thanks for that, guys. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. And also everyone in the comments. It's been very active and it really does help the episode. So yeah, me and Ryan will be back on Sunday with all your NFL news, and spoiler alert, there will be some fantasy content as well I've got planned, so keep your eye out for that. And until next time, let's talk sport, fans.